we made it. We made it to another Christmas Eve. Have you noticed how as you are getting older, it goes faster? Or is that just me? It just feels like we were just doing Christmas Eve, and here we are again. I was having this conversation with my youngest following the cantata last week, and I told him that Christmas Eve was coming on Wednesday. We'd have to go to church, and he was a bit scandalized that we had to go to church in the middle of the week. Maybe some of you are too, and he wanted to know if we were going to have to tell that story again. And I said, you mean the story of the birth of Jesus? Yeah, pretty sure. We're going to tell that story again. But it got me to thinking that we have all these ways in which we tell the stories of our lives and our faith, and we tell the stories over and over again, right? Because it helps us to remember. In our families, we have stories that we've told so many times, but there's something delightful, I guess, about hearing them again. So in my house, like maybe in a lot of your houses, we have a Christmas tree filled with ornaments. And all the, surprise, right? Yeah, I guess y'all probably do too. But the ornaments in our house, they all tell a different story. And we got them at different times. They have different meanings. Some of them I have had since I was a little girl, and when I got big enough and my parents wanted me to get rid of all my stuff out of their house, you know, that final box out of the attic, it does happen. I got a box and it had my special ornaments, and I loved it. And so our tree is filled with those. And one day, my husband and I were watching TV in our room, and Ryan came up, and he was carrying something from the tree. He was carrying this little ornament, and he said, "Hey, Mama, tell me the story of this ornament." Now, he has heard this story a million times. You can't see the ornament completely, but it says on it, Ryan. And so this ornament, though, has a great story. When I was heavily pregnant with Ryan, we could not agree on what to name him. And so, we were a few weeks from my due date and still had no idea what we were going to call him. And my daughter and I went to Hobby Lobby, and we were just kind of looking at the different Christmas things. And we found cute little ornaments like this. So I got one that said Thomas and one that said Samantha. And then Samantha comes walking up to me, and she said, "I have one. I know what we're going to name the baby." And she hands me this one, and it said Ryan. And it was as good a name as anything. So we went with it and bought the ornament, and the rest is history. No, really, it was one of those moments. It was like, that's it. Put it together, Ryan Steven, it just fit, and that was who he was. So I love telling him that story, and I love putting this ornament up on the tree. And I was like, okay, bud, now go put it back on the tree. Be super careful. And so he goes out into the other room, and I'm watching TV again and hear the unmistakable sound of glass shattering everywhere. And he says, if I tell the story tonight, I have to tell you the whole story, which means how I reacted. I was going to soften it a bit, but I think he says my reaction was I screamed his name across the house as soon as I heard that shattering sound. And we jumped up, and we went out, and there on the ground, one of the ornaments had fallen off of the tree and had shattered into a million pieces. And so I immediately told him to go to his room. I believe I said it kindly because he was barefoot and there was glass everywhere. He says I said it with a tone. We're just going to have to agree to disagree. Either way, it's true, he says. Yeah, it's with a tone. Okay, fine. You know, that's all right. It's all right. I'm a person too. And clap for Ryan, that's fine. Little children, right? They'll lead the way. So he went, and we got it all cleaned up, and all that was left that was recognizable at all of the ornament was this little piece. And I realized that after it was all cleaned up, he was pretty upset about it. And so by that point, I was in a more calm space about the whole thing, and so I took the little piece, and I went to his room, and he wanted me to tell him the story of the ornament that had broken. And so I told him about how Fletch and I we were on a date, and we'd gone on a boat ride, and we found this little glass factory, and they made handmade ornaments. And so he was pretty upset because it's not something that you can just go and get another of. But I realized in that moment I needed to tell him something more important than the story of this thing. And so I looked at him and I said, hey, you're more important than an ornament. You need to hear me. You are more valuable than a single memory, and I love you. And there's nothing you can ever do that is going to change that. Christmas, the whole story is a love story to us. In the midst of our brokenness, in the things that have not gone right, it holds the tension of joy and ache in the same moment. And I love that it's not a neat and tidy story, that Luke doesn't try to clean it up, and it's because God was coming into a broken world. There's a teenage girl, she's pregnant under mysterious circumstances. There's a weary couple who is forced to go and travel because of an oppressive empire. There's no room at the inn. There's a baby who's placed in a feeding trough. Everything about it is wrong, and yet this is the way that God chose to come. If we were writing the story, we probably would change it. But God chooses to be born into the mess. And I think that tells us something important about God. God is not repelled by our brokenness. When other people run away from it, God actually comes towards it. John's gospel puts it this way. It says, the word became flesh and dwelt among us. Not above us, not around us, not so far away from us, but right among us, in skin and bone, in poverty and pain, in the ordinary and the overlooked. But the story didn't begin in Bethlehem. It began long, long ago, a plan set in motion at the very moment in the garden when redemption was needed. It was a plan so remarkable it took thousands of years to come to be. And it went something like this.
Oh, come, Emmanuel, and ransom captive Israel, that mourns in lonely exile.
each of those moments in the video represent a part of the story, a point of light connecting us all. And we have our own stories and are part of that too, like ornaments on a tree, each one special, each one unique. Sometimes I think that we feel like we have to fix ourselves and get it all together so that God can work in us. But the truth is, we'll never get it all together. John Wesley used to talk about moving towards perfection, but it's like in the moment we think we've achieved it, we almost have to start again. But that's not how God works. God comes close anyway. Christmas tells a story of a God who doesn't wait for the world to be ready, who doesn't wait for humanity to be healed. God comes as we are. That means that there is no part of your story that is beyond the redemption of our God. If God can be born in a stable, Christ can be born again in you. Look at the shepherds. I mean, these were not people that spent a lot of time around others. They were dirty. They weren't put together. They smelled like nature. Not just people who had it all figured out, but the angel came to them. He told them not to be afraid. He shared the good news of Christ. And they come as they are, and they are welcomed. And when they leave, Luke tells us they return to their fields, glorifying and praising God. But notice something, their circumstances don't change. Their lives are still hard. They still have to go to work, but they have changed. They have seen that God knows where to find them and that they matter to God. And that's the beautiful thing about Christmas. It doesn't pretend that everything is fine. It doesn't deny the violence of this world, the ache of loss, the reality of suffering. The shadow of the cross hangs over the manger, and yet Christmas proclaims the truth that brokenness is not the end of any of our stories, that we matter to God. God comes not to shame us, but to redeem us, not to bypass our pain, but to transform it. And that is the shape of redemption. God taking what is broken and breathing new life into it. So in a few moments, we're going to take communion, and we're going to, after that, sing Silent Night. And as we light the candles, one small flame will pass from person to person. And there's no fireworks, there's no fanfare. It's probably the most beautiful thing I think we do as a faith community in worship this time of year. And that's how Christmas is. Light that shines in the darkness. It doesn't go into an argument with it. It just shines. Tonight, you don't have to resolve everything. You don't have to have the answers. You don't even have to feel completely whole. You only need to know that God has come, and God has come for you, for your broken places, for your weary hearts, for the parts of your life that still feel unfinished. The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness cannot overcome it. And remember, you are more important than an ornament. One of the ushers in the last service said, "Now I know something. I'm more important than an ornament." But he said, "Is that supposed to be deep?" I'm like, "It is deep. It's very deep. You are more important than the things of this world, than all the stuff that has come to kind of occupy our attention this time of year, the presents and the ornaments and all the things. You're more important than all of that. And you're more valuable than a memory, the worst moment of your life, the best moment of your life. You're more valuable than that to God, because you have a God who loves you, and there's nothing you can do to change that. Thanks be to God. Amen.